Sounds True presents Spiritual Night of the Soul, Tape 2 with Carolyn Mace.
The last stage, the stage you're reaching for, when you get beyond the separation, stage 1, when you get through stage 2, which is my guidance versus yours, and get through stage 3, which is my goal is not to stop movement, but to learn to go with movement. Then the last stage, where you want to hang out, is appreciation. You want to hang out in gratitude. You want to hang out in, I'm tired of telling God the way I want my life to look in order for me to be happy that I'm alive. Instead, I'll take life just the way it is. I cannot believe how many people I hear, well, I'll just make the best of my life. What do you call that? What's the matter with us? Because they didn't get the romance they want, or they didn't get the job they, quote, are resigned to, quote, making the best of their life. I remember someone who had a near-death experience told me that during the near-death experience, he was asked a question about seeing his own life. And he had a life review. And the question was, do you want to see the other side of the life review? And he said yes, largely because he didn't know what exactly he was asking to see. But the life review is that you see apparently every single choice you ever made, every conversation you ever had, everything is passed by you. But that's not really what caused him anguish. It's that he was shown what could have been had he chosen otherwise. That the many times where he was basking in self-pity, had he in those moments said, what is the matter with me? I'm alive and life is enough to celebrate, thank you, God. That became his practice. Just the appreciation of life becomes your spiritual practice. That would have changed the opportunities that could have come to him. It would have changed the people he could have met. Had he simply lived in gratitude. Had he simply lived in appreciation. I think that's the most challenging form of spiritual discipline, is to live in gratitude. And to stop deciding that because you didn't get your goals met, therefore you'll make the best of your life. You tell yourself that thinking is not allowed. I will not have that anymore. And then you go about your life as if it's ordinary, knowing that your interior is now extraordinary for the rest of your life. There'll be nothing ordinary about your inner life from that point on. You'll start having richer dreams. You start living in this wonderful place that says a miracle is not a miracle. A miracle is a word that you only get to use if you don't know how God behaves. Do you understand? Miracle are for people who are unfortunately surprised by the presence of God. And you start living in this life that says, anything's possible, anytime, any place. And that's all there's to it. And that's where I'm living. That's where I'm living. And that becomes your spiritual discipline, appreciation, and this whole notion that anything's possible, and you know the truth. I am where I'm supposed to be. When I'm supposed to change jobs, it'll happen. If I need to be suspended for a while, that will happen. If I need direction, that'll happen. But you have to be strong enough to know when you're sabotaging guidance. I consider it to be a fact to say to you that guidance is nonstop, that you don't really have to do anything, chant light candles, to get guidance. I don't really believe that's necessary. I don't believe that's necessary at all. I think those are acts that people do to develop the courage to listen to guidance. As a matter of fact, I think they're incredible blockades to guidance. That in fact, nothing is more available or fluid than guidance. It's just that when you don't like what you're hearing, you start with the candles, and you start with the oming, and you start with the chanting, and then you say, I know I'm blocked. So I'm going to give you some advice about that. When you in your spiritual practice, tell yourself you're blocked. Then write down what would be the most frightening guidance you can hear. What would scare you the most? And write it down in your journal. And make yourself look at it. Because if you can do that, and that's really the guidance that you are supposed to follow. Once you have the courage to write it down, that's almost like signing a contract. It's just reality. And then I won't let you go. There really is no such thing as being blocked. If you genuinely can look at yourself and say, I can't hear a thing, there isn't anything that I can be told that I'm afraid of. And that's genuinely true. Then you're in the deep space where you have to wait. Then you have to wait. And you're in endurance. You must endure waiting. Waiting can last a week. It can last 10 years. It can last 30 years. And that's what's true. Sometimes you wait because the greatest action that's going to be expected from you isn't even going to begin till you're 60, and you're in preparation for it. You're in preparation. What kind of preparation? You're learning to trust. You're learning to trust. You're learning to be that kind of spiritual being who transmits gorgeous light without needing acknowledgement that that's what you're doing. Where you have the capacity to become invisible. That's the direction of consciousness. To become invisible and allow God to work through you no matter what you're doing, whether you're selling shoes or hosting an international political arena. It doesn't matter. It's all the same, where you see everything as all the same, playing an equal part in the tapestry of human evolution. There is no small role. There is no small role. That is the truth. We have an incredible challenge ahead of us, I repeat, because never before have we been asked to develop our psyche and our soul simultaneously. Never before have we been asked to live ordinary lives while becoming extraordinary. And I want to repeat that the stage you want to move yourself into, where you want to live, is in gratitude. Gratitude in a contemporary sense, which means you're not afraid to be abundant. Which means you're not afraid to be near the physical world. You're not afraid to have love or intimacy in your life, where you recognize that all of these are faces of God. All of these are faces of God. And that when you live in gratitude, it becomes a discipline, so that you look at your life and you say, the package it's in is just perfect, not I'll make do. You change your vocabulary. You don't, quote, make the best of it. You tell yourself the best is it, I'll bring the best to it. This is a discipline. This is a hard discipline because you'll find yourself getting up and saying, I don't feel grateful today, I'm in big trouble. What do I do? The skies are overcast and you're feeling gloomy inside. You're lonely. You're frightened. Nothing's working. And you're supposed to feel gratitude. That's when it counts. Everybody's grateful for a banquet. It's when you can feel grateful for something that doesn't look like a banquet that I think we're being tested. So I remember this story. I was at the Holocaust Museum. And at the last stage of the Holocaust Museum, there is a video that you watch. And it's a video of people who survived Auschwitz and Dachau. Horrible experiences like that. And on this video, a man tells the story. He said that they were made to witness executions of a number of people this one day. And the man standing next to him at the end of this ran back to the barracks and he began the prayer of gratitude. And he said, how can you pray this prayer after what you just seen? And the man looked at him and said, because I'm so grateful that I'm not capable of that. Gratitude when your belly is full doesn't count. It's gratitude when we're empty. When the discipline becomes one of bringing wealth to your poverty through attitude, of bringing love into your life. When you don't feel love, then generate love. Do something loving when you don't feel love instead of waiting for love to come and find you. It's so hard to live with God, and it's so hard to live without God. With God is easier. But the journey is one of seeing every day in every way. And when you find yourself challenged, and you think, how am I going to get out of this? Lean back, close your eyes, and say, get me out of this. Ball's in your court. And let it go. Let it go. And I mean, let it go. Say that prayer. Get me out of this mess. Give me guidance. I promise you, guidance is not the result of being spiritually a good girl or boy. Even bad people get guidance. It comes with the human experience. You've got to stop thinking of it as a reward system. You're always under the tutelage of divine guidance. It never stops. I can't prove this, but I'm telling you, I actually believe, after what I experienced in my own life, what I've seen in my own life, I now believe you're guided even down to the apple you pick in a grocery store. That there is no such thing as a random anything. Everything is somehow choreographed in a way that we don't understand. We don't define will from this position. We don't understand choice when the script is scripted and yet free will exists. We don't understand that paradox. We may never get to understand the paradox. But the script is inclusive. And if you're in your dark night, be grateful because you're on the right path. Be grateful you're on the right path. And hold on. Hold on to a prayer book. Hold on to the scripture. Hold on to yourself. Because you will hit the light. I remember reading in the rich text of John of the Cross, and read this material. Go back and read the writings of great mystics. And John said, you cannot find the light unless you can enter the darkness. You must get into the darkness to know God. It's so paradoxical, but it's so true, because only in the darkness, when you genuinely need God for spiritual survival, do you feel that voice. You can't get to that voice if you're looking at it only for real estate advice. It's there, but it's not there at the level that makes contact, where you know for the rest of your life, I've got contact. I'm in connection. It's with me. And from that point on, you pray, you're connected to something. You're connected to something that buzzes when you close your eyes and say, I'm talking to you. You know heaven's listening. You don't have to wonder about it. You don't have to do silly rituals in the backyard and look for omens of proof. You just know. And when you know, when you say to God, send that person grace, take it out of my account, that's exactly what happens. When you say, talk to me, I'm having a bad day in Earth School, you know something is going to happen. You're going to have some form of contact within the next blink of an eye. I'll tell you a story in my own life. It was November 1993, and I was at the Finhorn Foundation. And I became very sick, big sick, not little sick, big, huge sick. And I was very frightened. As I lay in bed this one night, I found myself praying to Sai Baba. I have no devotion to Sai Baba. I didn't then, I do now. As I do to other, what I consider to be voices of God. And I couldn't believe that I said, send me some vibhuti. I need some vibhuti. Vibhuti is holy ash that Sai Baba, like in the Christian tradition, we have holy oils or holy water. Their tradition is holy earth, so it's ash. And vibhuti is a substance that he manifests right out of his hand. And it pours out, and he shares it with others. Holy ash. Well, I don't even know why I asked for that. The next day, I got a letter. It'd been in the mail 6 days already. It was from Denmark. It contained a little container. And it says, to Carolyn Mace from Sai Baba. It was vibhuti. I remember telling this story in one of my workshops. At the end of the workshop, one of the people in my workshop came up to me and said, my aunt is dying. She's a devotee of Sai Baba. Could I take some of that vibhuti with me? I naturally said to her, yes, but I thought, no, I don't want to share this. How could you ask me? You don't understand. It's the most precious thing I have, and you want some? But I controlled myself, forced myself to do the spiritual right thing, and dumped some in a Kleenex, and I said, here, take it. And I'm sitting there shaking, thinking, this came directly from heaven for me, and you want some? So, being the spiritually mature being I am, I gave it to her. She left. On my honor, 6 weeks later, I got a letter. She had taken the vibhuti home to her aunt. Her aunt was in Chicago. Her aunt passed away. Her aunt never saw Sai Baba, never had been to the ashram, was simply devoted to him. A package arrived for her aunt. It was vibhuti for Sai Baba and for me. He knew. If I could give the most valuable thing I could teach, the jewel that I would leave you with is heaven knows. Heaven is aware. There isn't a thing that heaven isn't aware of. What we are here to learn is endurance, integrity, honesty, trust. These are the reasons we've incarnated. When you're in the dark night, it's because God is waking you up and saying, now, go to work. Now. And you have to begin with looking at the things you are most afraid of. Being alone, being unguided. You have to go in that space and say, I can endure this because I know I have faith that it will end. And that's what you're waiting to hear, God. You're waiting for me to say, I can take this. If this is what you need, and this is my path of service, I can stay in darkness, and I won't call it madness. It's necessary madness. And then when the light comes on, what you realize you have gotten rid of is every part of you that is afraid to be alive. Now, how about some questions? What's the balance between expecting the miracle to happen and taking charge on the human level and making things happen? What a delicious question. This brings into the arena part of the paradox of a teaching that has gripped the New Age at its core, which is you create your own reality, merged with the mystical teaching, release and let go, and let God. How do you combine these two polar opposites, like the development of the self with the release of the self? How do you combine that? How do you combine making things happen and allowing things? This is what you do. Simple as this, all right? You live your life honoring your creative gifts. If you know that your creativity requires going to school and discipline, that's what you do. If you know that running a business requires a good business head on your shoulders, that's your end of the bargain. And you add into that bargain that you've agreed to play by spiritual rules. That you've agreed to play like an elegant spirit. You take your contract with you. And you interpret things with elegance. You do everything you can to make a project happen. And all of a sudden the project doesn't have liftoff, at least not according to you. You do everything you can, and when you realize this isn't going anywhere and I'm not doing anything wrong, okay, you're talking to me. Okay, maybe it's not the right timing. But your job is to cover every one of your responsibilities to the best of your ability with the best of the spiritual integrity you can bring to the situation, and then let go of the outcome. Your job is not to make the outcome happen. Your job is to get to the door, but not kick it open. You're not in charge of the consequences. You're in charge of the ingredients. Is that clear? Okay. Do I have any suggestions as to what to do when in the throes of the dark night of the soul? Yeah. I'm going to repeat again that managing the dark night takes a continual contact with some holy scripture. If you like the Sufi tradition, I don't care what it is, but you need contact with divine word. You need contact with a spiritual companion, a spiritual advisor. Now, that's very difficult sometimes to find. Here I'd say to you, tell God, send me someone. Send me someone. I need someone that I can open up to. But you have to be ready to open up maturely, which means that you know how to honor the role of your spiritual advisor. Their job is not to explain your misery and bring it to an end. Their job is to hold you through it, no matter how long it takes. Their job is to simply validate your journey, not end it. And I think that if you understand the role of the advisor is directed into your life. You need your time in prayer. And while you're in the dark night, keep a journal, not just of your misery, but of your spiritual fantasies and how you thought your life should be. Because that's what's dying every day, is the way you thought your life should be, so that the way it really should be can take over when the dark night's over with. So keep a journal saying goodbye to yourself. Keep a journal saying goodbye to yourself. into the life you thought you would lead. A release journey. These things will help you through the dark night. Watch yourself. Don't get ambitious about your spirituality. And don't get public about it. Remember, the journey is to become invisible. How do you hear guidance? Guidance is very simple. You know, first of all, I don't like the use of the word hear or see because you're applying 5 senses to something that has nothing to do with your 5 senses. So let us start with the dilemma that we don't have a vocabulary to describe guidance. Having said that, every feeling you have is a level of guidance. Stop expecting guidance to be a vision of clarity, telling you what to do with every stage of your life. Guidance tells you what to look at in yourself. Guidance is the part of you that says repeatedly, you shouldn't have done that. Do you need help hearing that part? Do you need help hearing, you know, you gave your word and you're breaking it? Do you need help hearing that? No, you don't. Begin to recognize that is guidance and stop expecting guidance to be a vision that opens up and says, here, build a hospital for crippled children. Get ordinary about the guidance you're expecting to hear, and you'll hear it all the time. It's when you put it in the category of, I want Red Sea parting visions, that you're going to find yourself waiting for Godot. Because that's not the way it happens. It's ordinary. Guidance is ordinary. You're walking through a grocery store and you pick up something and it says, you know you're not supposed to eat that. That's guidance. You begin to recognize that's not just an ordinary voice in me. That voice is attached to something that's talking to me. Start paying attention to the small things, and the big ones happen automatically. In the practicing of time with God and reading the Word of God and living the merged life of the contemporary mystic, is faith deepened? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, what is faith? What a rich question. I think faith is the most challenging aspect to develop in ourselves. Because in order to have faith, you have to have a crisis that requires you find it. You just can't have faith. It grows in you because you've been through something that requires you hang on till you get to the other side. Those incredible stories of people who hang on through great odds only to find it works out. They have faith. I remember that wonderful story of this young boy whose life story I edited when I was in publishing. He had a malignant, non-operative brain tumor. He's 9 years old. And he told me the story. He asked his father, what's wrong with me? His father said, Garrett, you have a malignant brain tumor. He said, can I die from that? And his father had the courage to be honest. His father said, yeah, Garrett, you can. So he said to me, well, this is just how he talked. Dogs, well. So I said, I need help, God. And he heard a voice. He said, I heard this voice. Said, Garrett, you can live or you can die, but you have to choose. I sat in bed. I said, I choose life. He said, and the voice said, all right, but there aren't any guarantees. So he looked at me and he said, so I kept that part to myself, and I didn't tell my mother. I didn't want to disappoint her in case I didn't make it. So he said about his healing. And he took a look at everything he had to do. And this is the lesson in it for all of us. He looked at his end of the bargain. He had to do daily visualizations. He had to eat a certain diet. He had to get rid of certain attitudes. He had to hold on. He did it. He did it every day, like clockwork. Then one day he announced to his mother, the tumor's gone. And his mother said, well, how do you know? He says, because I can't see it anymore. They said, okay, fine, but you keep doing the visualizations. He says, why? That tumor's gone. And he told the story of how, while doing a visualization, he would image himself to be Luke Skywalker from Star Wars. It was an image that filled him with power. He was in a fighter plane, and he was shooting the target, the tumor. He called it Planet Meatball because it looked like a meatball to him. And one day, while shooting the target, now look at this story. His guns got jammed. His guns got jammed. He wired into the control tower. My guns are jammed. Do you realize the control tower is his angel or God? And the voice was saying, we stopped your guns. We're sending help. And he saw a missile come in from the side. And the missile destroyed the tumor. Do you understand? God stopped his guns first. Again and again, refer to these stories where you learn a common pattern. God stops your life in order to step in it. If your life is being suspended, have faith that that's exactly the reason, and hang on. How does schizophrenia fit into mysticism in the modern age? Well, here again, we are living at a time when we have never had access to so many hallucinogenics, so many drugs, so much access to our interior, hypnotism, past life regressions. Do you realize all we have done is jumped into our interiors, and we're swimming around continually? I think to some extent that there is a point in the journey that if you don't have some level of spiritual practice to hang on to through this journey into yourself, and if your motivation does not mature beyond the point of wanting to go into yourself simply for egocentric, happiness-oriented reasons. Your motivation to get to know yourself, in other words, has to go beyond simply the development of someone who won't be battered anymore. Your motivation has to be that you are literally discovering your own divinity. You have to go through the personality stage. That if your motivation doesn't mature, you enter ordinary psychological madness. Ordinary psychological, repetitive depression. Depression that requires Prozac. You enter social depression. And if you look at it, it's because you become obsessed. You enter an orbit. And the orbit is, I'm not happy, I'm not getting what I want. If I only get what I want, look at the way you're talking to yourself. That's not what you would call mystical depression. That's personality depression. It's like a spiritual temper tantrum. That's the difference. It's like something Graham Greene said when he finally got an opportunity to meet Padre Pio. He waited 2.5 years. This British writer waited 2.5 years for a 15-minute appointment with a living saint. The day of the appointment, he attended the Mass Padre Pio was saying. And then instead of keeping the appointment, he went back to England. And someone said, how could you have done that? And he said, I saw that man, I felt that man, and I wasn't ready for the way in which that man could change my life. Take a look at yourself and recognize, I need to chart my way through this. You can look at yourself and say, I have to manage my personality. From there, I'm going into something deeper. I need to do this in stages. And it's every stage has a high and a low and a dark night and a light space. Your whole life is a spiritual journey. Get out of the habit of waiting to find the promised land. Our whole lives will be a non-stop cycle of chaos and stability, chaos and stability. We will never ever get to the point where the outside of our lives stops changing. We will never get to the point where the people in our lives stop aging or love us forever just in the package we came in. We will always wake up and find we have a new problem. We will always wake up and find disappointment and surprise. We'll always find flowers on our doorstep from some unexpected person. If you recognize life contains the flower delivery as well as a crisis waiting on the back door, you've got to live in that expectation and stop being disappointed by life's repetitive patterns of crises and stability. Stop expecting your spiritual discipline to bring you answers that you're not meant to have. Recognize the spiritual journey is chaos, and it's the management of chaos that you have to look for. If your husband or wife or lover is in the dark night, how do you respond? Well, first, I think you take a look at the fact that Western relationships are by their very nature high maintenance. No, think about it. It's really true. We are groomed to expect an incredible amount from our mates. We're groomed to expect psychological support, emotional, financial, sexual, this, that, the other. We require a lot from our mates. The dark night is a time in which they are saying literally, I can't fit you in. If you recognize that's the dark night, the best you can do is don't indulge it. Don't say, oh dear. Just say, oh, that's what it is. Okay. Be strong about it. Don't make heavy weather out of it. And don't ignore it. Just treat it as though it was an ordinary rainstorm, knowing that it's not. And then turn to your own prayers, because it will scare you. Everything about it will scare you, because you'll feel out of contact with this person whose contact you want very much. You'll feel out of touch. And you'll be afraid of the guidance this person might wake up with. So your task while your mate is in the dark night is to turn to your own very deep spiritual practice that says, help me through this. This could get rocky. That's what I tell you. I don't like crying, yet every time you mention the concept of appreciation, it's like a faucet. What's going on here? You know, it's so rare that someone just talks about celebrating our lives. We actually feel it. I mean, I find that when I teach gratitude or teach about it, I get choked up myself. I find myself getting higher than a kite inside my body, where I can hardly stay present with you because I can be seduced by the fact that I have a room full of people who volunteered to come listen to me pontificate. Where did you come from? I'm so grateful for that. How did all of this come together? And when I start looking at my life from that very rich point of view, I get very choked up. Everything and everyone looks beautiful to me. It's crying, but it's from emotional release. It's almost as though you're weeping at the death of an illusion, and it feels so good to bury it. So let the faucet turn on.
This concludes Side A. Please turn the tape over.
person would be. What is the difference between perseverance, endurance, and knowing it's time to move on? Beautiful question. Remember, the journey of consciousness, of mysticism, is to come to know yourself and your own motivations. Remember, that's the journey. So every day you have to talk to yourself and say, talk to me about what's motivating you today. You have to look at yourself and say, talk to me. What are you up to today? So you get to know your own motivations. And get to know when you're sabotaging movement in your life as opposed to genuinely waiting. And you can know when you start producing excuses, when you start entering negativity, manufactured negativity, when you find yourself thinking continually in why things won't work as opposed to why they will. You're beginning to express the symptoms of the saboteur, trying genuinely not to move forward in your life, versus saying, I've tried this and that, I feel no movement. I think I'm being asked to wait. Do you see the difference? When you are manufacturing excuses as to why you can't try something, you're sabotaging. Versus trying and accepting the outcome that says, I don't see any movement here. I'm being asked to wait. That's the difference. You can feel yourself sabotaging movement because it takes a lot of effort to do that. This is where you look at yourself every day and say, what are you up to today? What are you up to today? What's motivating your actions? If I were your spiritual advisor, I'd tell you keep a journal on motivations, daily motivations. Daily motivations. I was motivated today by, and write it down. From the 7 deadly sins to absolute transcendental guidance. So that you can see the energies, become aware of what moves through you on a daily, moment-to-moment basis. Get to know the fact that you are going to have 1,000,000 emotions an hour. You're going to be up and down at least 20 times an hour, much less a day. You're going to feel good about your life and bad about your life at least 8 times a day. You're going to feel clear and confused about your life at least 25 times a day. You've got to get to the point where you recognize this is just passing through me, and let it pass through you. And when you feel yourself working to sabotage guidance that says move on, enough, then you know you aren't going with the flow, but acting against it. You want to confront your saboteur. So what you do is, in order to do that, first force yourself to write your saboteur vocabulary down. And then chart the cycle of when your saboteur surfaces, because it's not with you all the time. Does it surface in the evening? Does it surface socially? Does it surface when you think about yourself doing something? And then consciously invite the saboteur in and make another choice right in front of it. Force yourself to choose the thing that would scare the saboteur the most. That's how you do it. God won't take away your saboteur. You do it. That's how you do it. It's great fun. It's great liberation once it's over. Can you give an example of a subtle form of selling your soul, one that might be overlooked in one's soul's inventory? Yeah, it's very easy. Sell your soul for money. Compromise yourself by saying, I can't move move on. I have so much invested in this, and therefore I'll lose too much. That's a selling your soul. Where all of a sudden, what you're really saying is, I have more faith in the human system of things than in the way God will order things for me. Again and again and again. Take a look at how often you'll compromise something because you're afraid of the physical consequences. That's your measure. When fear of physical consequences dictates the outcome, then you know that you're compromising some part of yourself if you give in to that. Whereas your other option is to sit back and say anything can happen, miracles can happen, and you begin to live in the perspective that it doesn't matter what I'm looking at from a physical point of view. If I feel that I need to do this, things will be just fine. It's a whole different point of view. In seeking guidance, my mind can be so subtle and tricky. Sometimes it's difficult to know what is my mind, my intention, or desire speaking, how to hear better. Well, you know, again, everything you hear is guidance. Everything you hear comes half from you, half from the non-physical world. Live it from that point of view. How do you know what is desire? How do you know what is ambition? How do you know what is guidance? How do you know? Well, this is what becoming conscious is all about. What motivates you? You've got to be able to answer that question. You have to enter your own motivation. You have to study yourself. So that part of the mystical journey, part of the dark night, includes confronting the part of yourself that manufactures your motivations. What motivates you to want a spiritual life? What motivates you to want to live in an ashram or to want to live a certain way or to want to be public about your spiritual? What are your motivations? You've got to know this part of yourself. And when you do, you can begin to pick out the difference between high voltage guidance and personal ambition. And let me say something. Personal ambition is not the enemy. Oftentimes, the gods draft the most physically ambitious people you know because they have an ego strong enough to do the task. Ambition is not the enemy. It's when ambition allows you to enter into the realm of superstition and private agendas and negative behavior that you know you've begun the journey of compromising your soul to get to the end. When your goal becomes one that you won't stop at anything for, then you know that's not guidance. Do you see what I'm saying? But if you're an artist, expect guidance on how to be a great artist. If you're a teacher, expect guidance on how to be a great teacher. Expect guidance to make you the most successful person you can be with your talent. Expect guidance in these areas. Expect it all the time. If you're going through one of your mysteries, which is, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know what to do with my life. I don't know what path of service to open up. Just say to God, okay, I'm going to pick one. I'm just going to pick a job and assume we'll start there. It's easier for guidance to go to verbs instead of nouns. Instead of waiting for God to say to you, here's guidance, I want you to take a job at this store. They've got an opening. Get over there. Just decide if you don't know what to do with yourself, start in some random place. It doesn't make any difference. Just put yourself in motion. What if the task is to simply take any simple job and be grateful for it, to see if you can do that? What if that's the test? Walk into the job and simply say, I'm grateful for this, instead of expecting it to be an overwhelming success from your point of view. It could be the metaphor of the birth in the manger, the most humble thing through which the greatest is born. So you take a job as a grocery clerk, or you take a job selling shoes, or you take a job in something that you would not normally do. But you take it with gratitude. And you say, okay, you want me to do this? This is where I am. And stop second guessing God. Stop of second guessing and looking for physical results and physical rewards because you shut up. That's where the discipline comes in. I'm going to start here and in the consciousness because this is the task to live with gratitude. How do I survive and heal my issues control? Remember, what's the hardest thing to do when you're a control freak? To give it up. All right, here comes the discipline. Ouch. You've got to enter your madness. Giving up control will create madness. Enter your madness. Enter the reason you're motivated by control. Nobody can do it as good as I can. The things you tell yourself as to why you need control. Enter your madness. Recognize, okay, I am a control freak. What's your motivations? Again, keep your eye on your motivation. Sometimes control freaks are necessary to run the planet. You can be the most talented control person around. Which is why what counts is not your action, but your motivation. Intention. Always, always return to the question that you have to ask yourself all the time, what is my intention for wanting to do this? What is my intention for wanting to control the outcome? What is my intention? If your intention is below the waist from a personal agenda, then you're going to have a conflict with God. You're not doing it right. You're saying my will versus God's. If your intention is because you've reached the point where you know you can manage things with detachment, then you know you're going with the flow and your control personality is necessary. Make sense? My husband and I have been talking to each other about our feelings of aloneness, loneliness, and we decided that we're growing towards something that is not defined, yearning for the divine. Our only answer is to meditate together. Meditate together is fine, and give up a goal. Give up deciding you know what the goal is. There's a goal, but you give up deciding you know what it is. And just enter the practice. Without manufacturing a need to be rewarded for it by light on the other side that tells you what to do for the promised land of eternal non-chaos. Because you're entering the meditation practice, so you no longer have any chaos. You're doing it wrong. You enter the meditation so that you can have chaos next to you at all times and not lose your center. Do you see what I'm saying? That's the goal. The goal is to let the madness become external while you become centered. So that the madness goes out of you and you remain centered. So that chaos looks like order because you understand God is behind every movement. But when you enter a practice and your idea is this practice will make me happy, will make me fulfilled, I'll never have another bad day in earth school. You're entering the practice like a child. You're looking for a reward for good spiritual behavior. You're doing it wrong. And as your spiritual advisor, I'd send you back to the drawing board and I'd say, no, I want you to come back to me with a different motivation. I want a different practice out of you entirely. I want a more mature motivation. And when you say, I'm entering it just to enter, as a way of contact, without an ambition, and you don't have a list of things you want to change in your life as a reward for good spiritual behavior, then, when you don't have that list, and you say, whatever happens around me, I think I'm fine. I am now linked so that no matter how severe the storm, I hold my center. Now you've got the practice down. Now you mysticism. And your mystery evaporates and you live in clarity so that the world becomes symbolically fluid to you. It's suddenly fluent in meaning. You see meaning everywhere because you cannot not see meaning. You've gotten the madness out of you. What is the heart of the madness? The heart of the madness is wanting life to be other than the way it is, wanting it to be humanly logical. It's not. Wanting it not to change, that'll never happen. Wanting chaos to end, forget it. That's the real heart of the madness. And that's why you enter the dark night. That's why we all do. You have to enter the path of the Spirit, of the God that you have been praying to all along, and finally saying that's not the way you behave. You'll always speak in chaos, but I'm protected. It's not really chaos. It's change. It's going with the flow. There really is no stability but the world between me and you. And I'll keep that stability no matter what happens on the outside. Your job is to center your response at all times so that no matter what happens on the outside, it doesn't scare you. That's your job. When a miracle happens for me, I want to share it. Is this conversation making my spirituality public, or is it sharing my gratitude? It depends. It depends on your attitude. It depends on your motivation. Again, you have a spiritual advisor. You're under obligation to share it. You're under obligation to say, I've witnessed something. I've been spoken to today. But when you turn it into a sign, that means you're better than someone else. And when you find yourself being awestruck, you need to take a look at what's motivating you to share it. You share it as an act of appreciation, not from another point of view, not from a lesser motivation. And then you can share it all you want when it's from appreciation, when it inspires others. It's not appropriate to share it as competition. Look what happened to me. I can't tell you how many times I hear people telling me of people they meet who seem to have powers. They can do chants, they can bury things in the backyard and make things happen. People run to them all the time for readings and this, that, and the other. How dare these people think that they're in a spiritual practice? They're steeped in superstition and the desire to stop chaos from happening in their lives. They want to control outcome. What would you do if you were God to someone like that? I'd pull the rug out from under you so fast, you wouldn't stop spinning for a decade. Until I broke you of the habit of running to silly rituals to see if you can control the winds of heaven. And instead, getting you to the point where you say, I don't care which kind of wind you send me, any wind is okay. You see the difference? After embracing your teachings, how would you suggest that parents incorporate this consciousness in the parenting of their children? The thing that I'd say to parents is teach a realistic version of God. First of all, teach the presence of God and the need for reverence. Teach the need to respect heaven. And not be casual about your spiritual practice. Teach the need to respect the sacred. That's essential. Teach prayer. And teach your child how to pray properly, not for stuff, but for guidance. Teach your child how to listen to guidance. That's what I'm doing with my nieces. I don't have my own children, but I'm certainly instructing my nieces in exactly that way. Every evening when I'm with the girls, I tell them we're going to speak angel fluently this evening. And we talk angel. We talk about the way angels will talk to them through the night. And to fully expect to hear from their angels. That's how my mother taught me. It's a very comforting way because you start hearing your angel and it's no big deal. Take the extraordinary out of heaven and make it ordinary. Don't present God as though getting to God is the result of starvation and a million years of celibacy. Stop that. Make the extraordinary ordinary. That's the greatest gift you can give your children. What should I do when I start hearing voices? You're always hearing voices. You talk to yourself. That's a voice. Pay attention to the quality of the voices that talk to you. Everyone hears voices. It's impossible not to. But what you want to do is take a look at, again, and again, the content, the motivation. Where did it come from? Watch the patterns of the voices. Watch the different levels. You know when your personality's raging inside of you. If I said, here, I want you to imagine this. I want you to imagine you're mad at somebody. Turn on that voice right now in your head. The voice that talks to you when you're mad at someone. Can you hear that voice? And how it talks to you? Now turn on the voice that talks to you when you are looking forward to a wonderful weekend and you're beginning to manufacture expectations. Can you hear that voice? Okay. Now turn on the voice that is afraid you're not going to have enough money. That you're afraid of things professionally. Can you hear that voice? And you see the different voices you have in you? Now turn on the voice. Make contact with the voice that doesn't seem to have any connection whatsoever to any earth ambition at all. That just comes out of nowhere. That comes out of nowhere. The voice, where did this voice come from? Feel that voice for a moment. Where'd this voice come from? It sounds like me, but it's not me. This is the voice that scares you. This is the voice that has clout. This is the one you listen to. So you get to know your voices. In order to do that, what do you have to do? You have to go inside of yourself. You have to study yourself. You have to listen to the many voices you have. You have an ambitious voice. You have a sensual voice. Some of you may have great voices that manufacture great fantasies. Those are all yours. And then there's the voice that comes out of nowhere. The constant voice that tells you, you know you didn't want to do that. You know you need to call that person and say you're sorry. You know you spoke too harshly. That's the voice, the one that won't let you go, the one that won't let you sleep. That's the one you want to make contact with. When you can't sleep at night because the voice is plaguing you, instead of trying to turn it off, walk into it and say, okay, you've got my attention, what else do you want to say to me? Turn your light on, grab your journal and say, okay, talk to me. What are my other unfinished things? Speak to me. Empty yourself. And you'll have a better night's sleep than you've ever had in your life. That's the voice you want to hear. What do I think about people who try and become spiritual without first doing some inner work? You know what is so funny? We're so ridiculous on this planet. We're so ridiculous, sometimes I can hardly stay in my body. We think we can outwit God. Can you imagine anything more ridiculous than that? You can't outwit, you can't run away. So questions like, what about people who aren't doing their inner work? Are you kidding? First of all, you can't get away from your path. It's not possible. You can't fool God. It's not possible. Anytime you look at someone else and you think that they're not doing their work, how do you know what they're up to or what their instructions are? How do you know? They could be under orders to drive you crazy. How do you know? How do you know what's really going on? I ask you this. How often have you been accurate in your assessment of what's going on? How often? Okay. How many times have you been inaccurate and found out something otherwise? Yes? Would you say that you're more inaccurate than accurate? Yes, I'm getting yeses. And yet you haven't learned to stop second guessing? Now there's an interesting spiritual discipline. Stop second guessing. Stop it. Every time you find yourself losing your spirit to saying, I know exactly what's going on, I know what that person's up to, stop yourself saying, here I'm doing it again, I'm second guessing. And pull your spirit back. Every time you find yourself judging a situation, every time you find yourself saying to another person, I'm disappointed in you, call your spirit back and say, wait a minute here, that's a blow. How do I know what that person's under orders to do? Give it up. Let that be part of your journey. What about thoughts of suicide when one is in the dark night? How can one deal with such thoughts? You will have thoughts of suicide. I'm going to tell you now, expect thoughts of suicide. Expect to come to death's door some way or another. The fact is, you have to experience that. If I were your spiritual advisor, I'd have a question for you. Do you want to die yet? Have you reached that point? I would encourage you to enter that place. Not say, I want you to get that close. We don't want to live anymore. So that when you come back to life, the Lazarus experience, when you go through a resurrection, you come back more alive than you ever were before, and you realize you were actually living dead before that experience. And what really dies is part of you that wants your life to be other than the way it is. That relentless voice that will bring you no peace. That says, if you only have this, if you only get this, if you're only with this person, all would be perfect. That relentless voice that tells you lies constantly. That's the voice that brings you to death's door. That's the one, when you recognize, if you can remember this teaching, that when you feel suicidal, and it's spiritual suicide that's motivating it, not a psychological depression, not a drug withdrawal, but genuine spiritual madness and depression. That you hang on and say, this is it. I am letting go of my ambitions for my own life. This is the release point. This is it. And let it die. Go through the death. Enter your own tomb. You'll sleep for days. You'll enter that space of no space, that death space. And then your resurrection comes. But expect that feeling. Are there acts of ritual that help when one is feeling madness? I'm all for prayer in an atmosphere of reverence. If it helps for you to light a candle and hold still in the light, because the light represents the heat of God, do it. Where I'm very cautious with people is that I don't promote rituals that that you think if I do this and do that and do this, that are almost borderline superstitious behavior, that you think you can influence the will of God by lighting 1,000 candles and ringing bells. Do you see what I'm saying? It's one thing to light a candle for spiritual contact and center yourself. It's another to do it out of a ritual because you think and expect your life to change according to your pathway. So there's the difference between the ritual of centeredness and the ritual that borders on spiritual magic. Okay? So yes, there are things people can do to survive the madness. But again and again, if you're in, and you are all of you are on a very rich and deep spiritual path, because of that, for that reason alone, you need to have a daily contact with God some way, some 15 minutes that you don't compromise for any reason whatsoever. You must honor your contract. If you say to God, you got me for 30 minutes a day or 20, whatever it is, I don't care what the time is. I don't even think heaven cares what the time is. Someone said to me he meditates 2.5 hours a day. I don't really think heaven cares. I think the important thing is that you have the discipline to honor the promise that I'll be there every day for you. Do you see? That's what really counts. Let me take one more question. What is spiritually correct to pray for and what is not correct to pray for? For example, is it okay to pray for a relationship or financial sustenance? Yeah, I think it's totally okay to pray for all kinds of experiences in this world. I think you could say, God, I'd love to have abundance. I'd love to have love. That does not distract that model that in order to know God, you can't touch anything of the world. That doctrine that goes back to St. Augustine that says the world is evil. To know God, you have to deny it. I think that is the same doctrine that's given us permission to become a global village that destroys life because we've so detached from our connection to that God is everywhere. Do you know what I'm saying? Because we've decided that the world's a bad place, spiritually speaking, it was defined as a place of seduction. We have it in our minds that in order to enjoy the fullness of ourselves, our physical body, our spiritual body, our mental body, that somehow it's wrong to pray for that it's not. It's not. However, what I would say is, and I'd close with this, that when you pray, I don't know that it's really necessary to tell God, I want sustenance, I want this, I want that, things. You can go through the things stage of prayer if you want. But I think you eventually, if you will, get to a point where you realize, I don't need to articulate my needs. That's secondary. My journey is to be present and live my agreements with God in terms of becoming conscious on a daily basis. The rest of my life will take care of itself. And my job is to get to the point where neither abundance nor poverty scares me. Where neither being married or being alone scares me. My job is not to pray for one of those states, but to recognize that no matter what state I'm in, I'll be fine. The goal is prayer, do you see? So that no matter what God gives you, whether you find yourself in the most wonderful relationship, or you find yourself alone, either way you say, this is okay, I can handle this. Whether you find yourself wondering where your next meal is coming from, or whether you find yourself rolling in loot, you say to yourself, God, either way, the challenge is the same. You're asking me, how do I manage myself? And you're watching my response to this, and that's what counts. So you pray for that. You pray for clarity about yourself, and the rest takes care of itself. The rest takes care of itself. I think that's what tell heaven your needs. Heaven knows your needs. You gotta trust that. So when you get to the point where you don't have to pray for things, you're living in that higher truth that says, you know my needs. I know my wants, you know my needs. The needs always win. And your job is to master your response to your own life. So that you look at your life and you say every day with gratitude, I like it. I like it. So that you respond to yourself by saying, find something to be grateful for today when you don't feel grateful. And when you feel miserable, you force yourself to find something to celebrate that day. Because that's when the celebration really counts. When you're feeling at your lowest, have your most lavish dinner party. Have people come over to celebrate your life. That's what you do. Instead of beating pounds and screaming about your childhood, turn it around and celebrate your childhood. Have a gratitude day. Instead of a day where you're forever processing your pain, turn it around. That's the journey, to turn yourself around. That's what mysticism is about. The journey inside and out again. Turn it around. Keep that as your mantra. Every time you find yourself losing power, turn it around. Just say, wait a minute, what's really going on here? I'm not going to lose my energy to this. I won't lose my energy. Turn it around and say, something spiritual is going on here. And remind yourself finally that the more confusing a situation is, the more the hand of God is there. Don't let chaos scare you anymore. And remember how challenging it is now to be a contemporary mystic in a world without a monastery, where you have to keep a job, look ordinary, while being extraordinary after hours. Where the role of contemporary psychotherapy is the development of yourself to your full ego strength while praying to and entering a spiritual discipline where that's the worst or the biggest block you can have. And you're faced with the merger of these 2 points, of these 2 traditions that have never merged before. Response you can have is gratitude, no matter how deep your mystery, no matter how dark the night. And that every one of us is going to be tested. Gratitude doesn't really count when you're sitting at a lavish banquet table with the love of your life. Gratitude counts when you're hungry and you can still say, thank you for my life. And we have to reach that point of gratitude. And then I think what that really means is God saying, good, you're free to go because now everything is going to look good to you. Make sense? Thank you.